Welcome back to Kerbal Space Program. This is 1.2 pre-release. Just about to get the actual final version around the corner. It is looking pretty good though, so I thought we'd give it a try. Let's get started and yeah, let's talk about what's new, because there's a fair amount of changes since I last played. So let's just go to a start. And this is literally the start of the game. There's nothing I've done in here. You may notice some nice fonts, and the actual size of the interface has changed. A few things. I've upped the size of the interface, so it's now 150%. Hopefully that'll give you a decent experience while you're watching it on YouTube. And yeah, let's talk about what's new while I get started. So I'm just going to set a couple of missions while I get started. So last time I covered it, I think, was prior to the release of 1.0, and there's been quite a few changes since then. For example, in 1.1 we got the 64-bit version back, which means no more crashes, or at least no more crashes due to mods, and lots of mods. In 1.2, however, we got the big new first release, the first features after launch, and they are the really rather nice comms network, also Kerbnet. And if you don't know what either of those are, don't worry, I'm going to explain what they are. Let's start with the comms network, because that's probably the easiest one to explain. If you're familiar with remote tech, it's sort of like that. For those of you who aren't familiar with remote tech, well, let's get you familiar, shall we? So, there's nothing much I can really do else with this craft. There's not much I can actually put on this thing, and we don't have any more parts. I'm not sure if such was there last time that I actually played, but if you put your cursor in the search, it gives you all the parts, and then you can just type in, like, pod, and get all the command pods. Very, very useful. And you can press tilde to get there by default. Jeb should be in here. Yes, he is. And we're not even going to name this. So, the comms network, what is it? So, in real life, which Kerbal is not like, communication satellites that aren't manned have to communicate back with directly. You have to be controlled by the ground here on Earth, or at least a lot of the time they do. And unfortunately that has problems like planets getting in the way, or the moon getting in the way, or the signal strength between wherever it is and home base. So in this case, not that Kerbal Space Program is anything like a realistic modelling of all of that, but the kind of same mechanic, if you like, the need to connect with line of sight, and the signal strength, or rather the size of the antennas, is now part of Kerbal Space Program, and that's where remote tech does that quite a bit more realistically than KSP will do, because KSP always strays on the side of fun versus the side of well, realism. Yeah, explosions. So, before we get started, I guess we should probably just explain a couple of things. Kerbal now has these little clicking kind of pin icons at the top right of each dialog box. Much nicer, because as this is spinning around, exploding or whatever else, burning up in the atmosphere, coming down, you can happily click on little buttons rather than trying to actually find the part as it's spinning on your screen. And Jeb is burning in his corner. Sorry, Jeb. Yeah. So those are nice, and that was part of one of the, I think, 1.0. So let's get started with some science. I keep trying to right click on these and I've already got them pinned. Let's just open this, just grab some science there. It's 3, it's terrible. And the crew reports, I guess we can get one from the ground. That again is sort of terrible. And that is pretty much all we can actually do. Transmit data, require complete. You know what, we can just recover the vessel. We should be able to get that science and then head straight back out again. Yeah, mystery goo 4. We've now got 6 science, and we just go straight back out with the same thing. Yeah, let's just launch. So, comms network doesn't apply when we have a pilot on board. So for these early missions where you tend to start with a pilot on board, doesn't matter too much. But we'll get to it. What else is new? There's also Kerbnet. That's more like being able to scan the planet's surface from orbit. If you're used to the ScanSat mod, very, very similar to that. In fact, let's get started just while I'm talking. You and you and you. There we go. SAS on, and I haven't, have I? I guess I haven't changed the thrust limit, so this is going to be awfully fast. Yeah, this isn't going to be optimal, but let's go. So crew report while we're flying. Yes, take that. Observe mystery goo while we're flying. Yes, take that, and then just try and lean over a little bit, and we'll see if we get over the water to try and observe the mystery goo a little bit more. So Kerbnet, yes, you'll now be able to point what effectively is a camera towards the surface of the planet, and you'll be able to see biomes and anomalies and other such things like that. Again, should be very, very cool. And are you now in a different area? No, just while you're still flying. I've already got flying, so I don't have any mods to tell me which experiments I don't have yet. So I think what we'll do is deploy the parachute, which we should now do by deploy when safe is the default. Of course, things are safe right now, so it's just going to deploy straight away. But if it wasn't safe, that wouldn't do what it has done in previous versions, which is deploy like this, get ripped off, and then you die and burn. There's a dying and burning kind of common theme going on with Kerbal Space Program. So yeah, that won't deploy until it's safe to do so. Bear in mind though, if you are in space, I guess it is safe to deploy, so I'm not sure whether that would go off too early. So I'd wait till at least you were coming down before actually triggering them. And we're now drifting back towards the Space Center. Not exactly what I wanted, but okay. And we can just get rid of these. I guess we can do an EVA report in the water. Yeah, I've got advanced tweakables on here, by the way. I'll come into that in a little bit. I've got extra buttons to click. In fact, I may turn that off just because that's a little bit distracting. And let's just increase the speed here so we get down to the water a bit faster. So what else do we have? Well, as I said, 64-bit version, which is what I'm playing. There may well be crashes, because this is the pre-release, so just bear it in mind. You can get it now on Steam. If you right-click on your game in Steam, oh, there we go, and let's just reduce the speed again. If you click on your game in Steam and go into the betas section, you can change that to 1.2 pre-release, and from there, you can download it and give it a try. Again, no guarantee that it's stable, but it'll probably be another couple of weeks or so until it's available. So I wonder if I just get out now. Yep. And yeah, EVA report. Yeah, we're just gonna can we collect take data and store experiments? We can, and get back in and get a crew report and take that as well and recover the vessel. For a grand total of how much science? 41. That's probably quite a decent amount to start off with. Pretty good. And we obviously recovered everything. And 1 XP gained. Fair enough. So in here now we can then select the usual kind of starting stuff. So basic rocketry and engineering. And head this way for the heat shield, which will help a great deal. And then I've got 16 left. I want batteries. And I can't have batteries. But that does bring us to a new part. Experiment storage unit. So if you use the Kerbal, you will be used to... where is it? Is it in here? It's in one of these. There we are. Science Junior. You'll be used to having that underneath your command pod and then trying to bring it back down by attaching more parachutes. Well, there's an alternative now. Now, I think there was actually, I'm not sure if it's a modded part. Please tell me in the comments. I can't remember. A little tape deck thing you can get later on in the tree. And for storing experimental data. Well, this is the same thing, but much earlier. So it'll store experiments. It's not so much the data, it'll actually store the experiments. and is much lighter than the Science Junior, which means we can bring it back more easily. We can start thinking about maybe, well, not trying to recover this. I suppose this will still, because that's 880, and what's the recovery? That's 1,000, so storing them both. But in theory, it will make it easier for us to dump this with a stack decoupler or something. And we just have a heat shield, you know, above the stack decoupler. It will come back down with a heat shield. But maybe above the heat shield with a command pod, we can have one of these. We can pull in all the data and use this because it's, you know, 0.05 tons. The Science Junior is 0.2 tons, so it's a quarter of the weight, and it's tiny. In fact, I think it's big enough just to fit on top of the command pod, and I think that's obviously done on purpose. So, you know, everything fits behind the heat shield, and hopefully you shouldn't burn things up. We have a burning theme this episode. But we're up to 134,000 Kerbucks. I got a bit of reputation, and we're not going to get to that. I could take... No, I can't take general rocketry. I'm short of science, and I can't even take stability, so I'm guessing I'm having those. And we've now got lots of more missions. Some things to note before I move on. I talked about single strength a little bit, but it's worthwhile noting that increasing the size of your tracking station, that increases one end of the connection, and that in turn increases the signal strength, which lets you transmit more science. So as you upgrade your space center, you will get a stronger signal. It also, however, depends on the signal on the other end. Now, even though that's the case, yeah, we know. Even though that's the case, there are instances whereby that won't be enough, you know, just a direct line. So what happens if something is in the way? Well, that's where we come on to relays and the actual network part of comms network. You may have seen them in realistic playthroughs. You may not have, not sure. Let me know. You can create networks of satellites that circle Kerbin. Now, excuse me, my voice is going. The common way of doing that is with either triangle or squares. So you have, let's say, a satellite up here, one down here, one down here, because they can all see each other around Kerbin. They can always communicate with each other, and therefore one of them will always be in range of the space center. Now, this isn't the default setting. The default setting is to add more ground stations. So instead of just, you know, the one down here, you also will have other ground stations around the planet. So you may not need that initial ComSat network. I, however, have said, hey, there's only one ground station, only one we know of. Maybe we count the one on the little island just down there. Just there, is it? I think it's there. Maybe that's counted, but as an extra ground station. But I want the harder challenge. So by default, that's not on. By default, you probably won't need a comms network around Kerbin itself. But, and here's the but, you may require one around the moon. Because if you're on this side, just coming past here, you won't be able to control it. Now, again, that's not the default option. The default is to have partial control. What's partial control mean? It means you can use throttle on or off, like full or empty, if I remember rightly. And it also means you can use the prograde and retrograde buttons, any of the buttons you've unlocked there. But you can't fly it with WSAD. You can't manually turn it or anything like that. I, however, have turned that off. So if I'm on this side of the moon, I may as well just be watching a rock in space. Bear that in mind. That's sort of like the hard version, and it's the version most like Remote Tech. Remote Tech also has signal delay, and that's not something that is apparent even if you play Remote Tech close in, like with the Moon or with Minmus, or even with Realism Overhaul, which makes things like the Earth and the Moon. If you're close in, then the signal delay doesn't really actually occur. But when you're out at dual, your message, your command takes time to gather. I mean, it travels at light speed. And in the real world, the sun, light from the sun takes about 8 minutes to get to Earth. So if you're about to slam into a planet and you send a signal saying stop or fire rockets, well, it's too late. So I don't think that's been incorporated into this. I've not seen it. Hopefully not. That's one of the hardest parts of remote tech. You need a flight computer just to actually fly the things once they get further away. So not terribly hoping for that. Hopefully they come down on the fun side and you don't have signal delay. You can turn signal delay off in remote tech, don't get me wrong, you can do that. And that makes it a bit easier to actually do stuff. So just bear in mind, when you go to the moon, however, there is not going to be any ground stations on the moon. Well, that is an interesting idea for a base. You may be able to create a base that is a ground station. For example, if... I can't remember if the moon is tidally locked. If it is tidally locked, then this face is always going to face Kerbin. So you could think about maybe a ground station here, or here, etc. So you could have ground-based communication. The only problem, though, is that you need a relay. So some antenna can be used as relays to actually send signals back. So you could just have some orbiting. And the orbiting ones, depending on how you orient them, will always have a line of sight back to Kerbin. You could also have what are Lagrange points, but Lagrange points don't really exist in KSP, but if you think about them as, I think it's L4 and L5, I can never remember the naming scheme. I think it's 1, 2 and 3 are in the middle, and I think L4 and L5 are kind of leading and behind. I probably will be corrected by a really angry physicist, but what's new? And you can have them in the same orbit as the moon, ahead of it and behind it, and think of it as the path might go from the space center to the orbiting satellites, out to the one ahead of the moon, and because it's ahead of the moon, you may well have line of sight to it, even if you're behind the moon. Alternatively, what I have done before is just have them in a polar orbit around the moon, so they're orbiting like this, and because of that, so they're in this plane, if you like. Because of that, even if I'm behind here, I can still actually get communication to either one, or it doesn't really matter. I can get it set up with very few satellites indeed. So yeah, just bear that in mind. When, however, when the moon travels a quarter of the way around its orbit, remember that the plane that is going this way is still going this way. So sometimes that satellite Kerbin is going to be over here. Sometimes that satellite is going to, again, lose contact with Kerbin. So if that's the case, then you also want one rotating in this plane, and it gets a bit more complicated, and you end up just doing the same thing, the triangle or the square or whatever. So we may get to that, we may not, but just bear that in mind when you're actually coming to the game new with the comms network. You can turn comms network off if you want to play it the old way, but because it's now kind of core game mechanic, it's worth playing it. So, is there anything else we can do before I end this episode? I don't want to make these episodes too long. It's now 18 minutes, so I've explained the new mechanics. Is there anything else we can actually do? Let's just see what parts we've got first, and then let's see how far that's going to take us. Yeah, that's terrible. Okay, so fuel tanks we have the swivel, that's good. We have hammer. Do we have the stack separators? We stack decouplers, I should say. We do. And we have the heat shield. So we can always get back. That's good. So even if we're out of the atmosphere, the heat shield should help if we're coming back in. Another change is that in 1.2 is that the the capsules have been made a little bit more heat resistant. They were known to be, again, fire explosions in previous versions. So just bear that in mind. Yes. Service bays. Not going to need that just yet, I don't think. Communitron. Ooh, is that new Communitron? Surface map version of the Communitron 16. Oh, actually, no. It just looks like it's rendering sideways. It's the one that is normally vertical like that. So, yeah. Just looks a little bit different because it's sideways. Alright, so let's just assemble something, shall we? We've got the Science Junior, but we don't have the recovery yet, so what we can actually do is do it the old way before we can do it with that new unit, and we put it like that. So you're either coming down with the Science Junior or not at all, because we're not separating it or leaving it behind. I guess we could recover it if we were in space, but No, we'll try and do it this way. And if we die and burn horribly, then yeah, that happens. Let's dump a couple more parachutes on it, just because that's... Do you want drogue shoots or full parachutes? I think full parachutes, just because this is... that's going to block things, isn't it? That is so annoying. What we can do is just take that off for the moment and go radial. Not radial, symmetry. And then we can try and put this back on, but not in symmetry mode. I guess yeah, it's going to be lopsided if I do this. It's going to block the doors. No matter what I actually do, it's going to block the doors. Okay, let's see if we survive without these. I want to test it anyway. And hey, Jeb's willing to test anything. So let's give that a go. Put the stack decoupler on it. Which is... it's been a while since I played stack decoupler. And some engines. We don't really have the really efficient engine yet, so not terribly much we can do with that. Yes. So if we use the swivel, we're going to need an awful lot of fuel tanks. 6 or 8, and I can never remember. But let's say, for argument's sake. Oh, interesting. Am I misremembering my keys? Oh, okay, that is actually new. That doesn't actually cause an amazing, what's the word? Freeze. The entire game used to freeze when you try to duplicate things like that, and now it doesn't. Except that this sometimes happens. Never mind. And how many is that? 2, 4, 6, 8. Let's give it a try with 8. Vessel is 8 tons. Okay, gimbal limit. You used to have to turn this down because of some issues. Hopefully that has been eliminated, and I think we're there. I don't think there's anything else that we can actually do with this. Maybe some fins, because we're going to be going going up. We may as well have some kind of control. We're not going to need landing struts, and we'll see where we get to. And this is just Junker rocket, because let's face it, there's nothing else in here that we really want to actually do. But what missions do we have? So, observational surveys, they are right out. I don't want to be doing those with a Junker rocket. Haul a stack decoupler into flight. That's got speed requirement at certain altitude requirements. I don't tend to like to like those a lot. Hammer a solid fuel booster at the launch site. Yeah, we could do that, but it's a relatively small amount. The flee, the same thing. In fact, we don't actually need any... We just have to activate the part for those, so I could just build 2 tiny things with no fuel in them and turn them on the launch pad and get 4,500 plus the advance. So yeah, I'll do those off camera. That's not exciting at all. This one, however, might be. Escape the atmosphere and test that on the escape trajectory out of Kerbin. No, I don't think that's going to happen with a Junker. Test the Mark 16 parachute in flight above Kerbin. That's sort of... Is that reasonable? With the materials bay? Well, let's take it and let's see if it's going to be valid or not. And let's just launch it as the final thing this episode. That'll bring it in under half an hour. Hopefully this thing won't fall over. Is that what I want? Yes, it is. Let's launch the thing. And another huge improvement. Tiny change, huge improvement. Now, that throttle goes to 100% every time you actually launch. It's amazing. I know, it's terrible. That is so amazing. It's a setting. You can control what its default is. So that could be 0 if you want it to be 0 for every launch. So nice. Now, I could do this at the actual... launch site, but I'm not going to, because I can do that with one of those other test crafts. And I am, however, just going to set up these, because that is much better than trying to do it while we are wildly out of control. And I don't have a Kerbal engineer, so I'm not really going to be bothered with all the maths, working out all the delta V's and stuff. We're just going to go and see where we get to. That's a bit fast, so maybe if we just... oh, hang on. How do I want to reduce it? Maybe a bit. Yeah, that'll do. Okay, so we're going to do an attitude control launch. So we're just going to head over a little bit. This isn't really a gravity turn because I'm controlling, you know, all aspects of it. Gravity turn is more of a hands-off sort of thing, although it's commonly misused as a term, so I guess everyone knows what you kind of mean by gravity turn. And what I don't want to do is, I'm not trying for orbit in this in any way. I'm just trying to get up into the upper atmosphere, sort of like here in this dark blue region, or higher. Ideally higher, because that'll let us get the mission for escape the atmosphere. And my fuel is rapidly dropping away. But I'm at least going to get into the upper atmosphere, which I'm then going to use one of the mystery goos right now. And that's 9 science. Good, good. And I can't reset it because I'm not a scientist, and I would have to crawl outside to do that, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave the other one around. And we are going to run out of fuel pretty soon, but we should get out of the atmosphere, and that's going to be really good for the amount of science we're going to get. There we go. And I can eject that now. Hopefully I remember to put the heat shield in. Yeah, I did. And we'll see if that parachute manages to stop us. It may well not do. The command pod should still survive, but we may end up destroying this bit, but we'll see. So we observe the materials bay, 22 science, and if we lose that, it's worth crying and then putting more parachutes on and forgetting about these. And we'll observe the mystery goo as well, because that we've left the atmosphere. And we want a crew report. Keep. Now, I guess what I could do is take the data out of that and then get back in here, so make sure it survives. But that's not living on the edge, is it? So let's see what it's going to be like. Yeah, let's speed things up, shall we? And just see how bad this goes. All right, we're going to get hit in the atmosphere anytime soon. And of course, it's not safe anymore to deploy that parachute. Really? We're about to hit the edge of the atmosphere. I just want to see what this is like. It doesn't matter whether it actually succeeds. We have actually got the escape the atmosphere, I think. Yep, there we go. Achieve goal complete. And I should delete those, but I'll just do that after the episodes and clean up and do those other couple of minor missions. And if I need to refly this, then I will refly this. It's not much of an issue. There is the retrograde marker for the surface. We don't have any control of the buttons over here yet, and we are slowing down. But if you look at that, that's the heat gauge. We don't want the heat gauge to go too high, and because we're at a very steep angle, we don't have much room to slow down in. But as you can see, altitude 3,000 to 7,000, and we need to be going below 230. Which looks like that is going to be achievable. There we go, that's one tick, and 230 meters per second. We may not get that. In fact, without this parachute opening, yeah, I'm going to pull it anyway. So we didn't make it, and that's probably because of just the weight of this thing behind the heat shield. We're landing in water, but we'll just see how slow we end up getting to. I'm not sure what the crash tolerance is for this. We'll see soon enough. 7. Well, let's just speed up and see. 6, 7. Maybe that'll do. Hopefully. Yeah, there we go. So it all survived. We didn't need any extra parachutes after all, and we kept it with us. However, with that extra piece of things, or that extra new part, the experimental container, I think, we shouldn't need to keep this with us. We could just, you know, toss it on the way back in and watch it burn up. A bit more burning. Anyway, recover vessel. That's a good point in the episode, I think. hopefully you like the other series called Stardew Valley. I started on the channel. This one, there's probably going to be more episodes too. I may not go through, every single thing you would do in a, playthrough, because you probably want to get to the new stuff, the common network stuff. We're up to 85 sites. So the next episode, we probably will carry on with some more missions, probably getting into orbit, and then we'll see where we get to from there. That does mean I can now take this, which will let me put the first probe, and that will lose contact pretty easily, so you've got to be careful about that. I will get the thermometer. Radiator panels I don't care about just yet, and an antenna. So yeah, it's good that they're all together, but mainly this and the thermometer and batteries, maybe. Yeah, we'll see. We got that, and I'll decide on the rest next episode. Not cliffhanger, but yeah, just next episode. Hope you've enjoyed watching. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.